Changing our perspective within profoundly shapes how we respond to our environment, the neurochemicals we produce, how we feel, how we relate to others, and all our relationships, including to the past and to ourselves, ideas, all creatures, and people. These, in essence, are vibrational, resonant changes that move our receptivity, shift our perception, create simultaneous positive and uplifting feelings of our ability to solve problems, which is also our resilience. In this video, you'll learn about specific types of sound patterns in music and how they have the ability to induce healing changes in our consciousness that impact our physical body, emotions, mind, and thoughts, as well as our inner connection to our spirituality, including significant therapeutic applications, a non-pharmacological intervention, and the use of psychedelics. I'll also share about micro-adjustments and their role with and without the use of psychedelics. Stimulating our own healing medicine capabilities. In the Western medicine model, there's an application for a condition, and the recipient responds according to the area being treated. The whole body is not taken into account, nor the psychological, emotional components, the history of the person, nor their early childhood exposure to trauma. In a comprehensive view of the application of using sound, vibration, and frequencies, it is very different in how we are affected. And the caveat is, this is not to say there's no longer a need to identify or get healing for a specific condition. We can magnify and engage methods that are waking the sleeping giant of our own healing, restorative abilities. Our receptivity to sounds, tones, and their patterns are at first glance to occur through our hearing. However, we also hear and listen and take in content through our emotional responses to the sounds and the transmissions through bone and tissue into and through and held within our neurological system, which impacts our response to chemicals produced in our body when we listen to these particular sound patterns and their compositions. As multi-sensory experiences, these sounds have an enrichment in our learning and retention of information with the capability of creating stronger neural connections, improving our ability to remember and understand information. Multi-sensory sound and music listening evoke profound shifts in consciousness and physiology, influencing our immune system positively, creating epigenetic processes that trigger our restoration and expansion, which are greater than the current, quote, normal model of our response system. Studies have shown that certain types of music, such as specific classical music, meditation music, and shamanic music and drumming, elicit states of relaxation, altered perception, and emotional release, accompanied by measurable positive changes, including heart rate, reducing cortisol levels, and brainwave activity, which takes us into these relaxation states and the relaxation response, diminishing the stress response, boosting our immune system, and regulation of mood disorders and trauma-related symptoms and chronic pain conditions. These epigenetic changes are also the characteristics of neuroplasticity, and that's the ability to change and grow, the characteristics of effective transformative shifts in consciousness. And what do psychedelic substances and specific sound and music have in common? When we're exposed to changes to our system through a psychoactive radical means, they change we get changes in our perception and our sensory awareness that often can lead to insight, behavioral changes, sometimes understanding, uplifting mood and possibility, resolution of anxiety and depression. These are neuroplastic changes that occur from the time when the ingestion of the substance takes effect until the effects wear off. And while some psychedelics last minutes, others can last a shorter time, from 3 hours upwards to 14 hours, depending on the dosage amount and other methods that enhance the longevity of the substance that's in the system. So gleaning long-lasting content from these peak experiences is a component that makes those experiences significant to change us and create positive effects. In the same way, psychoactive substances make changes in the different systems. Listening to specific sound and music affects changes in our physical, biochemical, emotional, and mental responses and immune system. After approximately 10 to 20 minutes of continued listening, depending on the individual's familiarity with the process. And this lasts until the sound patterns stop. The noticeable difference with the use of psychedelics is the short access time and how long the substance stays in the system, as well as any side effects related to the substance use. Comparing these effects with the changes from listening to specific sound and music are controlled and non-restrictive access that have no side effects and continue to make their biochemical, physical, immune system, neurological, emotional, and mental changes. So psychedelics or specific sound and music listening, what areas are vital to change ourselves, our physical, mental, and emotional healing abilities, and deepen our inner spiritual connection? There are areas that need to directly influence our systems to give all the benefits, which include changes in the neurological system, awareness, ideally that are long-lasting rather than short-lived as a one-time experience, managing sensitivity of different systems, including sensory, intuition, and responses to the levels of sensitivity. And then new content that arises, which may occur through insight, memory, and can include nighttime dreams, awareness, and overlap into waking consciousness, emotional content connected to memory and understanding, and up-leveling of emotional and mood stability, restoration of trauma, connection to openness, which can include forgiveness, acceptance, and compassion, and a deepened spiritual understanding. The distinction between the use of psychoactive substances and particular sound and music listening is psychoactive substances are physical substances that directly trigger generation and release of the neurotransmitters, often including serotonin, GABA, dopamine, and oxytocin, which make us feel better and give us all those positive benefits previously mentioned. Music and sound listening and particular sound and music patterns don't directly have consumption, but consist of pressure waves that resonate within the body that prompt effects of generating and releasing responses from those same neurotransmitters for serotonin, GABA, dopamine, and oxytocin. With continued exposure to these types of stimulation, there are changes throughout the system that are sustained. Similarly, when we listen to specific sounds and their patterns and frequencies and tones, there are distinct physiological effects on the body that induce relaxation and deep breathing activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes a state of calmness and relaxation, including releasing muscle tension, slowing of our heart rate, and decrease in blood pressure. Similar to psychoactive substances, listening to specific frequencies and rhythms are useful for depression, anxiety, and mental health concerns and diagnosis. So getting micro radical shifts, not all the time, but some of the time, considering a radical shift can seem like the easiest way to get what we need, especially in these times when we expect things to be delivered to us like social media in an instant or from an online next day order. But like next day delivery, the glossy nature fades soon, and there isn't much substance except to consider what next item to get or next peak experience to fill to get that brief moment of change or pleasurable feelings. Lasting changes in all of the systems occur through repeated adjustments that create subtle shifts, also called micro shifts, which build incrementally over time and that have long-lasting results. The subtle shifts may be how we think and notice our thoughts, understanding in our choices, levels of awareness, expanding or changes in our perception of senses, feelings of compassion and kindness, noticing synchronicities, even kundalini or energy rising within our being, maybe changes in our food intake, and so many other areas. While these are occurring as adaptations to our experiences and our new resonance, there's a micro subtle shifts. There's a larger field at work in the morphic resonant field. As these adjustments continue to create long-lasting micro shifts, how we feel about ourselves, our relationships and decisions, and our deep interconnection to our expansive inner wisdom, resonance continues and develops. So here's a story about a woman who was trained to make micro shifts that became a radical shift in her own knowing, development, and application, and actually in her life of her practices, which were completely unplanned on her part. I met Aaliyah in the 1980s at a retreat in Nevada, and she had been a child during World War II, where she lived in Austria. Her father was concerned he and his daughter would be separated during the war, and specifically that Aaliyah would somehow get separated from her home and not know how to get back. He developed a system to train his daughter so she would always be able to find her way home. And as you listen to the story and at the end, you might consider how this is a literal home and a metaphorical home as well. Aaliyah's father's method started each time with listening to specific music that was calming and centering. And as she described, I felt inwardly connected to everything. After listening to the music, Aaliyah's father took her half a block from their home, and then the next day, 1 block from home, and she had to find her way back. This was no small feat, since her father blindfolded her. Aaliyah had to develop her innate intuitive abilities to find her way home, and the music was the centering and beginning point of connecting to expanding innate abilities and neuroplasticity. Aaliyah's father continued his training, and over time, Aaliyah was able to find her way home blindfolded from a remarkable 5 miles away. You might think there are few applications of this kind of training. However, Aaliyah was able to apply her advanced ability for animal abuse. As a result of Aaliyah's training, she would locate steel jaw traps that were illegally placed, and they're used to kill animals and also to kill them for their pelts. She would stand at the bottom of a hill or a mountain and know where the steel jaw traps were located and could walk straight to wherever it was. she shared she would tell the forest ranger, and they would tell her there's no way there's any traps up there, and she would lead them to the traps. Her work is called an advanced form of remote viewing, setting an intention and trusting how you are directed. Aaliyah was trained to center, relax, incrementally trusting and developing her abilities, creating a radical shift in perspective and in her sensory awareness skills. The system she used allowed her to easily integrate the changes in awareness in her neurological system, managing sensitivity, noticing different and new content, and applying that content to a different geography system in a different country, and in remote viewing terms, apply to a different target or intention and connect to understanding. And on a side note, I often wondered how her father knew to train her this way. So while we now are in a time of great transition, which is calling us into transformation of who we are, who we think we are, and what we are capable of, incremental radical shifts as training and a practice allows us to navigate into our innate greater selves, because they up-level our system while simultaneously alleviating mental, emotional, and physical health conditions and trauma. So whether a person is using a radical adjustment, psychedelic, or other means for emotional, physical, and spiritual health, healing, and wellness, sustained changes in their behavioral, biochemical, and neurological responses and how they feel are what provides sustained value in and throughout their life experiences. Engaging multisensory transformational sound and music evokes and shows profound changes in the biochemical, immune, and physical system and mental emotional responses, and how to support, integrate, and sustain growth and development, whether a person is using psychoactive substances or not.